1. Introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable. Wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary. Episode 57 DFQ. March 22nd, 2025. Musk offers $100 to Wisconsin voters in a controversial tactic. In episode 57 DFQ. 1 World, 8 Cool Ideas to Repurpose an Old Fireplace. 2 World Tuberculosis Book Review. John Green is obsessed with tuberculosis. His new book explains why 3 World and United Kingdom hate jury duty. These people actually pay for it. Immersive theater productions are taking jury service, which most consider a burden to be avoided at all costs, and packaging it as entertainment. 4 Maine to Texas Medicaid to tribes may be cut. 5 New York and Vermont linking Ocasio-Cortez with Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez puts her own spin on the pitch of Bernie Sanders. 6 New York. The end of NYC congestion pricing by Trump is being delayed a month by transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. 7 Wisconsin Musk finance door knocker stump for right-wing Brad Schimmel, who opposes liberal judge Susan Crawford in the April 1st, 2025 election for Wisconsin Supreme Court. 8 Wisconsin Musk offers $100 to Wisconsin voters, bringing back a controversial tactic. 9 United States Tesla recalls nearly all Cybertrucks over stainless steel panels falling off. 10 United States Tesla share price falls. 11 United States Pam Bondi U.S. Attorney General to bring charges for Tesla damage, citing domestic terrorism. 12 United States Washington, D.C. judge blocks the Musk Doge from accessing Social Security records. 13 United States there is a way for Democrats to stop Trump and save America. 14 United States Justice Department tries to intervene on the Trump behalf in January 6th lawsuits. 15 United States tainted food given a pass. 16 United States it sounds strange Doe is not it. Trump muses about gutting the education department. 17 United States Trump rescinds executive order after law firm agrees to provide $40 million in free services. Trump reverses threat to suspend security clearances and cancel federal contracts after meeting with chair of Paul Weiss. 18 United States the Trump imaginary emergencies are doing real damage. 19 United States government science data may soon be hidden. Volunteers are racing to copy it. Vast quantities of climate and environmental information have been removed from official websites in the past month. Scientists are trying to keep it available. 20 United States food banks left in the lurch as some shipments are suspended. 21 United Kingdom and Canada. King Charles is rooting for Canada. You just did not notice. 22 United Kingdom Heathrow Airport fire. What we know about the closure of Heathrow Airport. 23 United Kingdom Ed Miliband says he is confident government will meet its target of net zero by 2050. 24 Germany in Germany orphaned by U.S. shock gives way to action. 25 Ukraine Trump has sought to control the information that comes out of his private discussions with foreign leaders. 26 RAWSEP afterward main content. 1 World, 8 Cool Ideas to Repurpose an Old Fireplace. RAWSEP. Few have you stopped the indoor residential wood burning in your home and breathing easier, but need to fill that gaping hole that just appeared in your life? Turn a non-burning fireplace into a pet area, a book nook, a shelving unit, a fake flower exhibit, a mini art gallery, a record shop, a toy storage area, or an indoor garden. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Family Handyman February 13th, 2025. If you have a fireplace will not be used, you will likely want to find a way to renovate the space. But if you do not have the budget or the time for a remodel, you can still repurpose your old fireplace fairly easily. If you would not be using your fireplace again, remember to fully close and seal it to prevent drafts, dust, bugs, and birds from entering your home. List item 1. Turn it into a pet area. You can repurpose your fireplace to make it a perfect place for a pet area. Add a few blankets and favorite toys along with sleeping baskets. It is sure to become the new favorite spot of your best friend. A Book Nook Another popular option is to clean and seal the fireplace hen stack the open space with books. Typically this approach favors a messy look that complements a casual cozy living room with a little artistic disheveled stack of books. 3 install shelves. If you are looking for a full renovation project to repurpose your fireplace, you can build inset shelves and space. These shelves can store decor devices, books, and more. They work especially well if you have nearby wood paneling that matches the shelves. 4. Place a vase of flowers. The empty fireplace makes a good backdrop for a bright vase or jar of flowers. Replace these flowers regularly to match the season and create a striking look, or use dried flowers and branches for a more permanent austere look. Just be sure to pick pet-safe blooms. If you have got animals, 5. Prop up some art, such as a sculpture of a lion shown here. Much like a vase of flowers, a piece of art can look beautiful displayed in a fireplace opening. Although you should measure carefully to make sure it will fit the artwork. Both covers up the empty firebox and provides a focal point to draw the eye. Some people prefer to use several smaller panels of visual art stacked together, especially if they do not want to hang them. 6. Store records or other types of music. Do you have a lot of old records lying around? Stack them in your fireplace as an easy storage option. This can also work with other types of media. However, records are particularly well suited to fireplaces in terms of size. They also add a hipsterly feel to more casual rooms. 7. Toy storage. Do your kids frequently pull out toys to amuse themselves in the living room? Consider repurposing the fireplace as a toy nook to store all of their favorite toys in a basket or bin for easy access and easy cleanup. 8. Grow a plant. Put a pot in your fireplace and grow a plant. This works well with spreading leafy plants that can spill out of the fireplace to get enough light and air, such as certain varieties of ferns. If you have got pets, ensure that the plant you pick is not toxic to them. While Congress considers potentially massive cuts to federal Medicaid funding, tribal health leaders are bracing for a crisis. 2. World Tuberculosis Book Review. John Green is obsessed with tuberculosis. His new book explains why the young adult novelist describes the disease as a window into the folly and brilliance and cruelty and compassion of humans. A photo of the tuberculosis patient Henry Ryder in Sierra Leone in 2019. The Ryder story is the heart of the new non-fiction book RAWSEP. Key excerpt: tuberculosis kills more people, over 1 million a year worldwide, than any other infectious disease. It would kill millions more annually were it not for a fragile system devoted to finding and treating the disease in developing countries. That system, long propped up with the help of funding from the United States, has been jolted by the Trump recent moves to slash foreign aid. Already hundreds of thousands of people with tuberculosis worldwide not get tests and treatments. The U.S. Agency for International Development, which Trump has been dismantling, projected worrisome consequences if 30% increase in tuberculosis cases globally and an influx of patients with drug-resistant cases arriving in the United States. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th. 2025 review of Everything is Tuberculosis: The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. Everything is Tuberculosis is incredibly timely. It is a plea to readers to care about a disease that does not directly affect them. Green is best known for young adult novels like The Fault in Our Stars, a best-selling tearjerker about 2 teenage cancer patients. Everything is Tuberculosis is his second nonfiction book. He is also a video blogger, and with his brother Hank Green, has built a large and devoted following of altruistic fans who call themselves Nerdfighters. Green seems to have this audience in mind with his expansive, easy-to-read Everything is Tuberculosis earnest and empathetic. He tells the tuberculosis disease story in a way that can feel at times like his series of educational YouTube videos. Green first got interested in the disease in 2019 when he toured a hospital in Sierra Leone. There, he met Henry Ryder, a vibrant, creative 17-year-old who was emaciated by tuberculosis that had grown resistant to standard treatment. The two struck up a long-distance friendship when Green returned home to Indianapolis. The Ryder story is the heart of the Green book. It is an encapsulation of why tuberculosis remains intractable in many poorer countries. After war in Sierra Leone impoverished the Ryder family, Henry was malnourished as a child, making him more susceptible to the disease. Ryder started standard treatment that should have cured him, but his father, distrustful of the healthcare system, took Ryder off the regimen midway through. Later, a cocktail of highly toxic drugs failed him, while bedaquiline, a safer, expensive medication that might have worked, was not available. Green also traces the history of the disease, which is caused by bacteria, usually attacks the lungs, and for centuries indiscriminately killed both the rich and the poor. He chronicles the medical advances, most notably the arrival of effective anti-tuberculosis drugs in the 1950s that have tamed the disease in wealthy countries. Each year, the United States counts fewer than 10,000 cases, nearly all of which are cured. The problem, Green writes, is that the cure is where the disease is not, and the disease is where the cure is not. His book reads as especially prescient amid the Trump disruption of health programs around the globe. In a video earlier this month posted on TikTok and Instagram, where he has millions of followers, Green said he wished the U.S. government could make my new book a little less relevant. 3. World and United Kingdom hate jury duty. These people actually pay for it. Immersive theater productions are taking jury service, which most consider a burden to be avoided at all costs, and packaging it as entertainment for an immersive production called Jury Games. A dozen people gathered in a conference room in London, scrutinizing evidence and deliberating to reach a verdict in an arson murder case. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th, 2025. In a small, brightly lit conference room tucked in the corner of a London office building, a dozen people are hunched over computers, printouts, and large Ziploc bags of evidence. The whiteboard on the wall behind them is a colorful maze of notes, names, and theories. This jury is trying to determine whether a man is guilty of arson and murder. In about 70 minutes, they will decide if he will walk free or face decades in prison. A group of people stand raising their right hands facing a video screen. The text on it says, "I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly affirm and declare that I will conscientiously try the charges against the defendant, and I will decide them according to the evidence. If you are the kind of person that likes true crime documentaries, it is like you are seeing one in real life," said Jeanette Ashmole, a London-based lawyer and television legal consultant. Who would not want to see that? But this is not a real jury with the power to convict a real person. Rather, these jurors, groups of friends, couples on dates, have each paid £46.50, or about $60, to spend an evening in this room scrutinizing evidence, reviewing video testimony, and deliberating to reach consensus on a verdict. This is Jury Games, one of several immersive theater productions that are taking jury service still widely regarded as a disagreeable burden to be avoided so far as possible, and repackaging it as entertainment. Similar experiences will be popping up in cities around the world this year, including the Jury Experience in Brooklyn, Toronto, Dublin, Madrid, and other cities in North America and Europe, and Murder Trial Tonight, a touring production in Britain. The Jury Games participants each paid £46.50, or about $60, to spend a Thursday evening hunched over laptop computers, printouts, and large Ziploc bags of evidence. "I assume a game like this is more engaging than real jury duty," said a London resident who is originally from Australia. A London-based lawyer and television legal consultant said that such experiences can be appealing because they let people sort through the twists and turns of complex crimes without the gravity and commitment that come with being on a real jury. If you are the kind of person that likes true crime documentaries, it is like you are seeing one in real life. The outsized role that jury duty has played in pop culture is among the reasons Jury Games, which started on Zoom during the pandemic, has become popular. The case, which involves a man who has been accused of setting fire to an office building after hours, while a person the authorities identified as a cleaner, but was he really, was still inside. Over the course of the evening, a larger plot, including a government cover-up and a love story, unfurls. Unlike in actual trials, there is a video link that the jurors can use to ask questions of the defendant, who is played by an actor. Bringing in drinks from the bar downstairs is also allowed, as is cell phone use. Unlike in a real trial, the jurors were able to use a video link to ask questions of the defendant in the case, who was played by an actor, clocking in at just over an hour. The experience is significantly shorter than most real jury trials and leans into entertainment over authenticity. "These experiences are not real," the British lawyer said. But she added, "At the end of the day, you could not have one of these experiences that was that true to life, because nobody would buy tickets. The people who take part in Jury Games take a moment for everyone to get comfortable, but enthusiasm swiftly sets in, bringing a sense of fun to the enterprise. I assume a game like this is more engaging than real jury duty," a London resident who is originally from Australia said after participating in a recent Jury Games night. "I am slightly fearful when a group is quiet," said an actor who plays the role of court coordinator for Jury Games and must keep the fake jury in order. But he added, "By the end, everyone is hooked to some degree. At the end of every Jury Games night, after voting to find the defendant guilty or not guilty, the participants learn what really happened in the case." On that recent Thursday night in London, 12 participants walked out knowing they made the right call. It is the kind of tidy conclusion that most real jurors can only dream of. For Maine to Texas, Medicaid to tribes may be cut. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission. Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. KFF Health Newsletter, March 21st, 2025. Indian country has a unique relationship to Medicaid because it helps tribes cover funding shortfalls left by the Indian Health Service (IHS), which provides health care to Native Americans with the related Children's Health Insurance (CHI) program. Medicaid provides coverage to more than 1 million Native Americans. The joint state-federal Medicaid program accounts for 2/3 of non-IHS revenue. For tribal health providers, tribal leaders want an exemption from any cuts and will fight to preserve access. Medicaid is one way the federal government meets its treaty obligations to provide health care to us, said the director of legislative affairs for a nonprofit advocacy organization for 33 tribes spanning from Texas to Maine. In February, the House approved a budget resolution that requires lawmakers to cut spending to offset tax breaks. The House Committee on Energy and Commerce, which oversees spending on Medicaid, is instructed to slash $880 billion over the next decade. The IHS projects that it will bill Medicaid about $1.3 billion this fiscal year, which is less than 0.5% of federal spending on Medicaid. If Congress makes big cuts to Medicaid, tribal health facilities need to scale back services for tribes with a high incidence of chronic illness and a shorter life expectancy. 30% to 60% of tribal healthcare budgets are Medicaid dollars. More from KFF Health News scientist whose work led FDA to ban food dye, says agency overstated risk. Almost 40 years ago, Joseph Borzalika published a study on red dye number 3, a petroleum-based food coloring. The FDA cited his work to ban the additive in January, but Borzalika says it is safe in New York. Providers must put patient costs on the table. The fiscal year 2026 budget of the New York governor revises a law designed to limit unexpected bills that can put people at risk for unfair medical billing practices and reduce medical debt. Consumer groups say it does not go far enough without federal action. States wrestle with kratom regulation. Montana Free Press, a bill proposed by kratom industry advocates, is prompting consideration and some concern. In the Montana legislature, congressman blames Trump team for ending telehealth Medicare benefit. Not quite right. Representative Ro Khanna of California warned of Trump cuts to Medicare telehealth access hitting March 31st. But if Medicare recipients lose telemedicine benefits that day, it will be because Congress failed to act. KFF Health News on air journalists share how additives enter food supply and measles harms the immune systems of kids. 5 New York and Vermont linking Ocasio-Cortez with Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez puts her own spin on the pitch of Bernie Sanders. The two progressive leaders, one young and one old, are touring Western cities with a similar message, but a key difference in how they sell it. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat of New York, kicked off a series of events with Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, in North Las Vegas, Nevada on Thursday. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission. Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th. 2025, even as Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont has fired up the American left over the past decade, his speeches have the flavor of a sociology lesson. He rarely makes himself the main character, which is why it is striking how differently the young leader often seen as his successor, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, approaches politics. She introduced herself by name, which he never does, and used her experience waitressing to explain her politics to a crowd of several thousand people. I do not believe in healthcare, labor, and human dignity. Because I am a Marxist, I believe it. Because I was a waitress, she said. Because I worked double shifts to keep the lights on. And because on my worst day, I know what it feels like to feel left behind, and I know that we do not have to live like this, Sanders vibe. Contrast delivered a version of the same speech he has given since before Ms. Ocasio-Cortez was born, railing against corporate greed, eat the rich. Someone yelled. The divergent styles illustrate how after Sanders built a political movement by emphasizing inequality in America, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez brings a contemporary flourish to their shared progressive politics. Sanders, 83, learned politics in the 1960s. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, 35, had her political education in the Trump era. For Sanders, his political story relies on making a cogent case about inequality at the macro level. Only rarely does he speak in detail about his feelings, his middle-class upbringing, or how he lost both parents by age 21. Instead, he rails against billionaires who squeeze workers and now run the federal government. The worst addiction in this country today is the greed of oligarchy. He told supporters on Thursday, they are like heroin addicts, they need more and more and more, and if they have to destroy Social Security and Medicaid to get what they want, that is what they will do under a spring sun hot enough to disable cell phones. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez told a crowd dressed in vintage Sanders campaign gear about a recent television appearance by one of the Trump lawyers, the lawyer describing her as a mere bartender. It was the kind of political skill that has many progressive Democrats ready to anoint her as the next leader of the left-wing political movement, built by Sanders, who has mostly, but not totally, ruled out running for president again in 2028. Several attendees at the rally wore shirts or hats with Ocasio-Cortez logos. Still, there are a few topics Sanders wants to discuss, less than his mortality, or who might succeed him as the leader of the left. In an interview this week, Sanders, who mentioned the name of Ms. Ocasio-Cortez just once in his 42-minute speech on Thursday, declined to entertain discussion about whether inviting her on tour with him represented a passing of the torch that is inside the Beltway. Gossip, he grumbled. You got any better questions? 6 New York, the end of NYC congestion pricing by Trump is being delayed a month by Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. A Trump official pushes congestion pricing deadline back a month. New York was defiant in the face of the Trump demand that the tolling program end by Friday. Now Washington is willing to wait a month. A street in the congestion zone full of traffic. Federal authorities have ordered New York to pull the plug on congestion pricing, setting up a showdown with defiant transit leaders. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. March 20th, 2025, less than 24 hours before the Trump deadline for New York to end its congestion pricing program, the Secretary of Transportation gave the state a reprieve and issued a threat. The Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy extended the deadline by 30 days in the latest twist in a political battle between the administration and the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which has vowed to keep operating the tolling program. In terms of public safety, traffic crash injuries in the congestion pricing zone are down since the start of the toll, said the spokesman for Riders Alliance, a transit advocacy group. That point was conspicuously absent in the Duffy letter. Rather than threaten to defund our trains, he said the secretary should get on board and see the progress we are making. 7 Wisconsin Musk finance door knockers stump for right-wing Brad Schimmel, who opposes liberal Judge Susan Crawford in the April 1st, 2025 election for Wisconsin Supreme Court. Musk returns to his Trump playbook in a big Wisconsin race. The billionaire, now a White House official and no longer a private citizen, is spending millions of dollars to elect a conservative judge and making himself a main character in the race. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 22nd, 2025. Much has changed since the last time Musk tried to win an election in Wisconsin 5 months ago. His chosen candidate was Trump. Musk did not work in the White House. It was unclear if the Department of Government Efficiency was more than just a meme. Musk was unproven as a political force, taking advantage of new campaign finance rules to deploy an army of canvassers who could knock on Wisconsin doors millions of times. Trump ended up winning the state by about 30,000 votes this spring. Musk is returning to that Badger State playbook in an entirely different political world. The Musk chosen candidate, Brad Schimmel, is a hopeful for the state Supreme Court. Brad Schimmel, whom the billionaire barely knows, Musk is now subject to White House ethics rules, but is simultaneously throwing millions of dollars into pro-Trump causes. Wisconsin Democrats are running hard against him and his government-gutting effort in the April 1st, 2025 election. If Musk succeeds, Wisconsin conservatives will retake a 4-3 majority on the court and push the battleground state rightward on abortion rights, labor rights, and congressional maps in a sign of the importance of the Wisconsin Supreme Court race for conservatives. Trump endorsed Judge Schimmel on Friday night. A Wisconsin conservative-controlled court could be in a position to issue a Musk-friendly decision in a lawsuit from his electric car company Tesla, challenging the Wisconsin law prohibiting vehicle manufacturers from owning dealerships on social media. Musk began to show interest in the Wisconsin court election 8 days after Tesla filed the lawsuit in January. Musk is largely sticking with the formula that worked last time: door knockers, lots of money, and even a similar petition meant to identify and turn out conservative voters. The Musk Super PAC America PAC has laid out $66 million so far. The group has assembled a canvassing operation of over 500 employees who have knocked on doors with about 40 paid active canvassers in the Green Bay area, roughly 70 in the Madison area, and more in Milwaukee and rural parts of the state. According to 3 people briefed on the operation, the Super PAC has told its canvassing firms to cut their worst performers. The group declined to comment on its internal workings. Canvassers, most of them paid about $25 an hour or $150 a door, have flooded Wisconsin neighborhoods wearing White America lanyards with a badge that shows a photo of Trump raising a fist after the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania last summer. The race may be different, but the script is still Trumpy. Canvassers distribute literature that says a vote for Judge Schimmel, who currently sits on a Waukesha County Circuit Court, would keep the Trump agenda moving forward. The brochures also feature a QR code that sends voters to a website where they can check their registration status, find early voting locations, and request mail-in ballots. The Musk Super PAC is again hoping to turn out voters who do not always make it to the polls during early voting, which began Tuesday, or on Election Day. The election is also more Musky. America PAC canvassers are leaning more into the billionaire celebrity than they did did during the presidential race. I Am With America PAC, an organization run by Musk, reads part of one question that Wisconsin canvassers are reciting later. They ask, can Trump and Musk count on you to vote for Brad Schimmel? People involved in the Musk 2024 outreach considered their Wisconsin organization among their better-run efforts, and the field operation is led by the same strategist. But the Musk group jumped into the 2025 court contest months later than it entered the presidential race, giving itself only 6 weeks or so to help Judge Schimmel. One difference from 2024, a nonprofit group that Musk has previously backed, Building America Future, has spent about $45 million on the race, mostly on television. The group, which does not have to disclose its donors, claims to have improved polling of Schimmel by enough that the ground game of the conservative side could tip the balance with people like Musk coming in. We are pretty much matching the Democrats dollar for dollar, and that never happens in Supreme Court races. A perhaps unsurprising difference from 2024, Musk has not appeared quite as excited about Judge Schimmel as he was about Trump. Musk has not reposted viral content about Judge Schimmel or his liberal opponent Susan Crawford, and his posts about the race are sporadic. Democrats have tried to paint Judge Schimmel as a stooge of the billionaire, and the judge has tried to distance himself from Musk. Trump, of course, has kept Musk rather close, and that is perhaps the most significant difference from last November. Musk is no longer a private citizen. He is the Trump right-hand man in trying to dismantle significant parts of federal agencies, working as a special government employee in the White House. Never before has a senior White House aide funded a super PAC that promotes the political agenda of his boss. The Hatch Act prohibits federal employees from engaging in political activities while they are on the job, but it allows almost all of them to donate to political campaigns. White House aides also frequently play roles in Trump political operations, and doing so is legal as long as the work does not occur while they are acting in their official capacity, said a government ethics expert at the Campaign Legal Center, a watchdog group. There is no law that prohibits somebody from their First Amendment right of giving a contribution. When Musk is not working for the White House, he is a citizen that can engage in this political and campaign activity. Since Musk joined the Trump, his super PAC has defended his government work and directed his supporters to follow his progress on his social media platform. The super PAC sent 2 emails this week to its list of supporters, encouraging them to look at the website and X account of the Department of Government Efficiency. On Friday, the super PAC went a step further. It began selling Doge-branded tumblers, hats, and t-shirts for up to $35 a pop. 8 Wisconsin. Musk offers $100 to Wisconsin voters, bringing back a controversial tactic. By offering cash to voters who sign a petition opposing activist judges, the Musk super PAC can help identify conservative voters in a race for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The Musk super PAC and an allied nonprofit group have spent over $11 million to try to elect a conservative candidate in the 2025 Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th, 2025. Musk is bringing back his most controversial gambit from the 2024 presidential election, paying voters as part of a plan to identify and turn out conservative-leaning ones. The super PAC that Musk founded to funnel his fortune into Republican causes, America PAC, said on Thursday that it was offering $100 to registered voters in Wisconsin who sign a petition in opposition to activist judges or refer others to sign it. Musk has been using the group to spend millions of dollars to elect a conservative candidate for the Wisconsin Supreme Court in an April 1st election. The petition reads, judges should interpret laws as written, not rewrite them to fit their personal or political agendas. By signing below, I am rejecting the actions of activist judges who impose their own views and demanding a judiciary that respects its role, interpreting, not legislating. The purpose of the petition is multifaceted: drive attention from the news media, increase awareness and voter registration among conservative voters, and help America PAC collect data on the most energized Wisconsinites who are likely to turn out for the conservative candidate Brad Schimmel. Musk carried out a nearly identical maneuver in battleground states before the November election, generating significant legal and political debate. The Philadelphia district attorney sued to stop the distribution of those lottery-style payouts, which went up to $1 million to voters who signed a document in support of the First Amendment. But the day before Election Day, a Pennsylvania judge declined to halt the sweepstakes America PAC revival of the use of petitions, and the wording of its new document in Wisconsin reveal 2 of the Musk priorities as he wields wide power in Washington. The first is his focus on the court election in Wisconsin, which could swing control of the Wisconsin top judicial body back to conservatives after liberals won a major victory there in 2023. The Musk super PAC and an allied nonprofit group have spent over $11 million to try to elect Judge Schimmel, which would again push the battleground state rightward on issues like redistricting and abortion rights. The Musk electric car company Tesla has also sued Wisconsin to challenge a state law prohibiting manufacturers from owning dealerships. In January, 8 days after Tesla filed the suit, Musk wrote on X, very important to vote Republican for the Wisconsin Supreme Court to prevent voting fraud. The second is the Musk budding obsession with removing judges he sees as thwarting the Trump agenda. He posts daily on X about his frustrations with the federal judiciary, and the refreshed language of the new petition points to that focus. But despite the petition from the Musk group denouncing judges who are openly political, there are few doubts about where the loyalties of his preferred candidate in Wisconsin lie. Judge Schimmel is a longtime defender of Trump who dressed up as the president last Halloween. 9 United States Tesla recalls nearly all Cybertrucks over stainless steel panels falling off. The recall of about 46,000 vehicles includes all models that were manufactured from November 2023 when the Cybertruck was first produced through February. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th, 2025. Tesla is recalling nearly all of its futuristic style Cybertrucks after it found that an exterior trim panel was falling off and creating hazardous driving conditions. The company said on Thursday this is the 8th recall for the model. The recall of about 46,000 vehicles includes all models that were manufactured from November 13, 2023 when the Cybertruck was first produced to February 27th. In a report filed with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration on Tuesday, Tesla said that only about 1% of the electric vehicles from this model were defective, but that it would recall all the vehicles as a precaution. As of March 14th, Tesla had identified 151 warranty claims that might be related to the the trim panel issue according to the report, but the company said it was not aware of any collisions, fatalities, or injuries that are or may be related to the condition. The announcement marks one of the largest recalls for Cybertrucks in the short end. At times, flawed history of the model on the road. Other issues with the vaunted model have included losing drive power, its front windshield wiper malfunctioning, and an accelerator pedal getting stuck. Cybertruck sell for about $80,000 to $100,000, depending on customization. Tesla has told drivers that they may continue to drive their Cybertrucks until the company contacts them for a service appointment when parts become available in their regions. Tesla first became aware of reports of a partial delamination of the stainless steel panel on January 7th. The report said the recall comes after recent setbacks for Tesla. The Tesla stock has lost nearly half of its value this year, in large part because of backlash against Musk, the Tesla chief executive, who is now overseeing cuts to federal spending for the Trump. Those cuts have spurred a number of Tesla owners to sell their vehicles in protest of the Musk values and politics. Others have taken to more aggressive forms of protest, including defacing and destroying Tesla vehicles. Tesla is facing increased competition from other electric vehicle makers, despite being the largest electric vehicle manufacturer in the United States and having reached a $1 trillion valuation after the November election. 10 United States Tesla share price falls. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization inside Climate News newsletter. Tesla has turned into a partisan lightning rod that is losing value fast when people are protesting at Tesla retail locations because of the political actions of the CEO. When that Tesla sales are plummeting around the world, when that the Tesla vehicle lineup is sorely in need of a hot new model or redesign that is not coming anytime soon, and when that Tesla market valuation is based largely on the promise of technological advancements that have yet to be demonstrated, that company is in trouble. Tesla share price peaked on December 17th when it closed at $47,986. Its market capitalization, which is the sum of the value of its stock, was $15 trillion as of the market close on Wednesday. The share price was $23,586, down 51% from the peak, and the market cap was $759 billion. For perspective, the market cap of General Motors is about $50 billion. Last year, 48% of the EVs sold here were Teslas, and no competitor cracked 10%. Tesla also is a key player in building and maintaining EV charging stations. If any of the companies behind charging infrastructure run into financial problems, that could be a big concern, said a senior manager for the Clean Transportation Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists. Having those publicly accessible networks be reliable and expanding them is an essential piece. She said if Tesla or other charging companies scale back their efforts, it would be an impediment to increasing EV ownership for all brands. This is especially true now that most automakers have adopted Tesla North American charging standard, which means Tesla charging stations can be used by people driving other brands. The Tesla struggles could fuel a perception problem for EVs. At the same time, sales figures show that other automakers were able to increase their EV sales to offset the Tesla decline, and then some. The Tesla US sales were down 56% last year compared to 2023, while overall EV sales in the nation, which includes Tesla, were up by 73% through the first 2 months of 2025. Tesla sales were down especially in Europe and China, but global EV sales were way up. Global sales were up 30%, including an increase of 35% in China and 20% in Europe and the United States/Canada. Other stories about the energy transition. United States renewable energy companies adjust strategy to highlight economic benefits. Wind and solar developers are emphasizing how their resources are an affordable way to meet soaring U.S. electricity demand. The New York Times. This message shows how developers are adapting to the Trump by talking about economic benefits as opposed to environmental ones. United States. The Trump attacks on IRA cause heartburn for clean technology firms. The Trump tariffs and threats to cut clean energy tax credits have cast a pall over the manufacturing companies that started or grew because of Biden administration policies. Any news tariffs are increasing the cost of raw materials manufacturers use and could lead to retaliatory tariffs that would hurt the competitiveness in other markets of the companies. The Trump talk of revising tax credits under the Inflation Reduction Act are destabilizing even if they never come to fruition. Vermont clean energy policies are under attack from emboldened opponents. Vermont is a national leader in passing laws that call for sharp reductions in carbon emissions, but those laws could soon be revised. Canary Media. Republicans gained seats in the November election to the point that Democrats no longer have veto-proof majorities, and Vermont Governor Phil Scott, a Republican, has been talking about his concerns with how clean energy laws may affect consumer bills. California adopts new battery storage safety rules. The California Public Utilities Commission has approved new maintenance and operation rules for battery energy storage systems. Utility dive. This follows the January fire at the Moss Landing battery plant, an event that has led to lawsuits and a renewed focus on safety. The new rules require battery system operators to have emergency response plans, along with many smaller changes that relate to record keeping and other aspects of running a large battery system. 11 United States. Pam Bondi, U.S. Attorney General, to bring charges for Tesla damage, citing domestic terrorism. Pam Bondi said the three accused had caused a violent destruction of Tesla cars and charging stations. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian. March 20th, 2025, 1528 EDT share. The U.S. Attorney General announced charges against 3 people she accused of violent destruction of Tesla properties amid protests and controversy over the Tesla owner Musk's role in slashing U.S. government staffing and budgets under Trump. In a statement on Thursday, Pam Bondi said the days of committing crimes without consequence have ended. Let this be a warning. If you join this wave of domestic terrorism against Tesla properties, the Department of Justice will put you behind bars. People would characterize this week as a brand tornado crisis moment. Musk claims to have done nothing harmful. Tesla is a peaceful company. We have never done anything harmful. I have never done anything harmful. I have always done productive things, he told Fox News. So there is some kind of mental illness thing going on, because this does not make any sense. Musk did acknowledge that he has upset people with his work for Doge and unsubstantiated allegations of improper conduct by government workers, though he made another unsubstantiated claim when he said it turns out when you take away the money people get fraudulently, they get very upset. They basically want to kill me because I am stopping their fraud, and they want to hurt Tesla because we are stopping this terrible waste and corruption in the government. I guess they are bad people. Bad people do bad things. 12 United States Washington, D.C. judge blocks the Musk Doge from accessing Social Security records. Judge Hollander calls the Trump 8 hunt for supposed fraud a fishing expedition in temporary restraining order. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, March 20th, 2025. A federal judge on Thursday blocked the Musk so-called Department of Government Efficiency Doge from accessing Social Security records as part of its hunt under Trump for fraud and waste, calling the effort a fishing expedition. Judge Ellen Hollander granted a temporary restraining order that prevents Social Security Administration SSA workers from allowing Doge to have access to records that contain personally identifiable information. Musk, the richest man in the world and a huge political backer of Trump, has been tasked by Trump with slashing costs and employees at the federal government. A mission that has caused chaos and disruption across the U.S. amid mass firings and huge numbers of government projects and contracts being canceled. The Trump says Doge has a 10-person team of federal employees at the SSA, 7 of whom have been granted read-only access to agency systems or personally identifiable information. Musk echoes right-wing conspiracy theories to defend Social Security, cuts the lawsuit. Challenging the Doge access to sensitive records was brought in February by the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, the Alliance for Retired Americans, and the American Federation of Teachers Attorneys. For the plaintiffs called the access unprecedented in her ruling. The judge also instructed Doge to disgorge and delete any non-anonymized data it has obtained from the SSA since Trump took office, and said the agency cannot install or access any software in Social Security systems. Social Security payments are a lifeline for millions of elderly Americans across the country, and any effort to cut back the system is widely seen as a political minefield. However, Musk has claimed the system, without providing much convincing evidence, is rife with fraud. 13 United States, there is a way for Democrats to stop Trump and save America. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 21st, 2025. You are meant to feel powerless. That is what a strong man wants to make you feel, as if nothing can stop the takeover of your country. The richest man in the world is destroying parts of the government. There is the potential for corruption on a huge scale, yet there are no mass protests, no corporate or cultural pushback, no daylight between Republicans, and only a faint pulse from the Democrats. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut has kept up a frenetic pace in the media, narrating the extremity of the Trump actions in real time. That heightened awareness, mixed with unusual action, is a necessary response to extreme circumstances. The history of other countries captured by autocratic populist nationalism suggests that often is a financial crisis, a war, or some other major event that leads to the quashing of dissent. That may be when America joins the ranks of countries like Russia under Putin that turn to imperial conquest. Consider that the relatively normal first Trump ended with a deadly riot amid a pandemic. Democrats are right about the need for a populism focused on Republican corruption. Trump and his billionaire cabal are redistributing wealth and power in ways that will harm most Americans. The administration offers evidence of this every day, but this critique is only a starting point. Recently, the most promising signs have been seen in the actions of ordinary people protesting at Republican town halls and the enormous crowds that turned out in several states to see Bernie Sanders rail against oligarchy. Examples of protests in Turkey and Slovenia build huge coalitions around one topic. Looking at the United States, healthcare is a place to start. The enormous cuts proposed for Medicaid and services for veterans are deadly serious for Americans, including many who voted for Trump or did not vote at all. Make that the basis for a movement. Spotlight harms that will come to everyday people. Protest at shuttered facilities and communities, not agencies. In the Capitol, amplify voices of people out in the country. Hold town halls where Republicans are afraid to boycott the businesses of specific billionaires like Musk. File lawsuits, sign petitions, organize communities, including Deep Red. One, support people who get arrested. Create a culture around the movement. Of course, healthcare is not the only issue to build on. Protests could come on housing and Social Security that converge in elections in 2025 and 2026. Avoid Democratic impurity tests. And an agreed-upon Democratic national message that has shrunk the Democratic Party. There is a lot of folks who are nervous about getting into our tent, Murphy said, because they think they will use the wrong words or they will get canceled. Or if they are with us on 11 out of 12 issues, we do not want them. It is easier to invite someone into a movement if all you both must agree on is one issue, not a dozen. This approach will not stop all the harm that Trump is doing or the danger he poses, but if you can get a win on one issue, it punctures the sense of invincibility and inevitability that a strong man relies on. The thing that is making him powerful now is he is thinking that nothing can stop him. You need one victory when you get that. When people start to feel that they still have power because of what they did together. Now New Jersey Senator Andy Kim ran on defending Obamacare. Let us be proud of fighting back, of caring about one another, of committing to rebuild what is being destroyed. Because America is not just about the powerful becoming more powerful at its best. It is about the underdog beating the longest of odds. 14 United States Justice Department tries to intervene on the Trump behalf in January 6th lawsuit. The department employed a maneuver that could protect Trump from legal and financial consequences in a series of civil suits. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th, 2025. The Justice Department made an unusual effort on Thursday to short-circuit a series of civil lawsuits seeking to hold Trump accountable for the supporters of Trump in their attack on the Capitol on January 6. 2021. Department lawyers argued in court papers filed to the judge overseeing the cases that Trump was acting in his official capacity as president on January 6th, and so the federal government itself should take his place as the defendant. That move, if successful, could protect Trump from having to face judgment for his role in the Capitol attack and from having to pay financial damages if he were found liable. 15 United States tainted food. Given a pass, Trump postpones deadline for companies to record and trace tainted food. A law passed in 2011 required food companies to track food in the event of contamination resignation, and a recall. The administration delayed the move set to take effect next year for 30 months. The proposed rule would have required companies and individuals to maintain better records to identify where foods are grown, packed, processed, or manufactured. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th, 2025. The Food and Drug Administration said on Thursday that it would delay by 30 months a requirement that food companies and grocers rapidly trace contaminated food through the supply chain and pull it off the shelves, intended to limit foodborne illness and death. The rule required companies and individuals to maintain better records to identify where foods are grown, packed, processed, or manufactured. It was set to go into effect in January 2026 as part of a landmark food safety law passed in 2011 and was advanced during the Trump first term. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the health secretary, has expressed interest in chemical safety in food, moving to ban food dyes, and on Thursday, debuting a public database where people can track toxins in foods. But other actions in the first months of the Trump have undercut efforts to tackle bacteria and other contaminants in food that have sickened people. The Trump cutbacks included shutting down the work of a key food safety committee and freezing the spending on credit cards of scientists doing routine tests to detect pathogens in food. This decision is extremely disappointing and puts consumers at risk of getting sick from unsafe food because a small segment of the industry pushed for delay despite having 15 years to prepare, said the director of food policy at Consumer Reports, an advocacy group. Many retailers have already taken the steps to comply with the rule. Still, trade groups for the food industry lobbied to delay implementation of the rule in December. In a letter to Trump in December, food makers and other corporate trade groups cited a number of regulations that they said were strangling our economy. They asked for the food traceability rule to be pared back and delayed. This is a huge step backward for food safety, said the director of regulatory affairs at the Center for Science in the Public Interest and Advocacy Group. What is so surprising about it is this was a bipartisan rule. 16 United States. It sounds strange, does it not? Trump muses about gutting the education department. Trump signed the executive order in the East Room of the White House, which was packed with jittery children. Trump signing an executive order as children in the background write on copies of it. Trump signed an executive order to diminish the education department in Washington on Thursday. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th, 2025. It seemed as if Trump just needed a little reassurance. He was in the East Room of the White House, which was packed with jittery children, conservative activists, influencers, and 6 Republican governors from Florida, Texas, Virginia, Indiana, Ohio, and Iowa. All had come to watch him sign an executive order to gut the education department, something conservatives have dreamed of doing for decades. There were activists in the room, like the creator of the influential Libs Up TikTok account and a co-founder of Moms for Liberty, a parents' rights group that worked hard to help elect Trump. This was exactly how they hoped the Trump restoration might go, observed the president of Concerned Women for America. Trump did not have the temerity to tear up the education department the last time he was president. What changed? He had 4 years to think about it and plan. 17 United States. Trump rescinds executive order after law firm agrees to provide $40 million in free services. Trump reverses threat to suspend security clearances and cancel federal contracts after meeting with Chair of Paul Weiss. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, March 20th, 2025. The White House has targeted law firms whose lawyers have provided legal work that Trump disagrees with. Last week, he issued an order threatening to suspend active security clearances of attorneys at Paul Weiss and to terminate any federal contracts the firm has. But Trump suddenly reversed course following a meeting between Trump and the chair of the law firm Paul Weiss. Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison over the White House order. The Trump order singled of one lawyer who previously worked at the firm who called Trump a mob or mafia boss to avoid the consequences of the Trump order. The White House said the firm had agreed to take on a wide range of pro bono matters that represent the full spectrum of political viewpoints of our society. 18 United States. The Trump imaginary emergencies are doing real damage. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 21st, 2025. The Trump initiatives have frequently invoked national security, but in the absence of any actual threat to the nation that may make a difference in the courts, as profoundly disturbing as the Trump sweeping and irresponsible violations of civil liberties have been. In one respect, they are not exactly unprecedented, where a president asserts emergency power in the wholesale absence of a crisis. However, as Trump has, it should be easier for courts to defend the rule of law and respect for basic human rights. The fact that so many courts have already issued orders countermanding his measures, including where he has invoked national security or military authority, suggests that even if courts often feel uncomfortable assessing the gravity of a genuine national security threat, they know enough to know when there is no there. The Trump actions have already sown chaos, and the Trump strategy may well be to bully the courts, if not to defy them altogether. The absence of any actual emergency underscores the imperative of resisting, but it also increases the odds that if we do resist, the rule of law and civil liberties can prevail. That is, of course, until we face a real emergency. 19 United States government science data may soon be hidden. Volunteers are racing to copy it. Vast quantities of climate and environmental information have been removed from official websites in the past month. Scientists are trying to keep it available. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 21st, 2025. Amid the torrent of executive orders signed by Trump were directives that affect the language on government web pages and the general public access to government data touching on climate change, the environment, energy, and public health. In the past 2 months, hundreds of terabytes of digital resources analyzing data have been taken off government websites, and more are feared to be at risk of deletion. While in many cases the underlying data still exists, the tools that make it possible for the public and researchers to use that data have been removed. But Now hundreds of volunteers are working to collect and download as much government data as possible and to recreate the digital tools that allow the public to access that information. So far, volunteers working on a project called Public Environmental Data Partners have retrieved more than 100 data sets that were removed from government sites, and they have a growing list of 300 more they hope to preserve at ECHOS. Efforts that began in 2017 during the Trump first term when volunteers downloaded as much climate, environmental, energy, and public health data as possible because they feared its fate under Trump, who has called climate change a hoax. Little federal information disappeared then, but this time is different, and so too is the response. We should not be in this position where the Trump can literally take down every government website if it wants to. We are not prepared for having resilient public information in the digital age, and we need to be. While a lot of data generated by agencies like climate measurements collected by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is required by Congress, the digital tools that allow the public to view that data are not. This is a campaign to remove public access, and at the end of the day, American taxpayers paid for these tools. Farmers have sued the United States Department of Agriculture for deleting climate data tools they hope will reappear in February. A successful lawsuit led to the republication of the Social Vulnerability Index of the Centers for Disease Control. A banner at the top of the CDC webpage now notes that the Department of Health and Human Services was required to restore the site by court order. The Public Environmental Data Partners Coalition has received frequent requests for two data tools: the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, or CJST, and the Environmental Justice Screening Tool, or EJ Screen. Nonprofit organizations used both screening tools to apply for federal grants related to environmental justice and climate change, but the EPA closed all of its environmental justice offices last week, ending 3 decades of work. Preserving the current data sets is the first step, but they could become irrelevant if data collection stops, she said. More than 100 tribal nations, cities, and nonprofits use CJSD to show where and why their communities needed trees, which can reduce urban heat, and then applied for funds from the Arbor Day Foundation, a nonprofit organization that received a $75 million grant from the Inflation Reduction Action. The Arbor Day Foundation was on track to plant over 250,000 new trees before its grant was terminated in February. How hard it is to reproduce complex tools depends on how the data was created and maintained. CJSD was open source, meaning the raw data and information that backed it up were already publicly accessible. For coders and researchers, it was put back together by 3 people within 24 hours, according to MS. But EJ Screen was not an open source tool. Now the coalition is working to conserve even more complicated data sets like climate data from NOAA, which hosts many petabytes. Think 1,000 terabytes or more than 1,000,000 gigabytes of weather observations and climate models in its archives. People may not understand just how much data that is. Dr. Gerke said in an email it could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per month just in storage fees, she said, without including the cost of any sort of access. She said they were talking to NOAA personnel to prioritize the most vulnerable and highest impact data to preserve as soon as possible. So far, the data they have collected is largely stored in the cloud and backed up using servers around the globe. They have worked out pro bono agreements to avoid having to pay to back it up. Some data have so far been left alone, like statistics from the Energy Information Administration, among other agencies. Zane Selvons, a fellow co-founder of Catalyst Cooperative, said the group had worked for the past 8 years to aggregate U.S. energy system data and research in the form of open source tools. The goal is to increase access to federal data that is technically available, but not necessarily easy to use. So far, we have been lucky, Selvons said. Folks working on environmental justice have not been as lucky. 20 United States food banks left in the lurch as some shipments are suspended. A representative of a nationwide food pantry network said USDA officials had informed him that some food aid distributed by the federal government was under review. Food banks across the country recently learned that the shipments they had expected to receive this spring through a federal program had been suspended. They were left with little time to identify new funds and supplies, and with no assurance that the aid would ever be restored. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 20th. 2025 food banks across the country are scrambling to make up a $500 million budget shortfall after the Trump froze funds for hundreds of shipments of produce, poultry, and other items that states had planned to distribute to needy residents. The Biden administration had slated the aid for distribution to food banks during the 2025 fiscal year through the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is run by the Agriculture Department and backed by a federal fund known as the Commodity Credit Corporation. But in recent weeks, many food banks learned that the shipments they had expected to receive this spring had been suspended. Earlier this month, the Agriculture Department halted 2 other programs that distributed food to banks and schools. Lawmakers are also mulling cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as food stamps, which were used by about 42 million people in the 2023 fiscal year. 21 United Kingdom and Canada. King Charles is rooting for Canada. You just did not notice. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. MSN, March 22nd. 2025. The King of Canada wants Trump to back off. Just do not expect him to actually say that publicly. That King Charles III of Britain, who is also the head of state of Canada, wants to stand up for the largest country in his realm as Trump talks about turning it into the 51st U.S. state. At the same time, he has to honor the British government. His desire that he keep Trump, who deeply admires the royal family suite. The result has been a masterclass in passive-aggressive pageantry from Buckingham Palace. In early March, Princess Catherine appeared in a red outfit with white pearls, which represents the colors of the Canadian flag, while King Charles sat on a chair made of Canadian birch with maple leaves engraved on its legs. The king then planted a maple tree, a symbol of Canada, in the garden of Buckingham Palace. On Monday, the king, wearing a red tie, hosted the new Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Much to catch up, he said, as he welcomed Carney in Buckingham Palace for a private audience. Palace officials say this was all meaningful a wink and a nudge to Canada that he is on their side. Some Canadians say the regal smoke signals, all faithfully relayed by Canadian TV news anchors, are too subtle. The Brits in general are doing what they usually do, and they are being very polite right now, said an artist in Ottawa. A personal trainer at a downtown Ottawa gym wants Charles to be more forthright. I would like to hear him denounce and be like we see Canada as a sovereign nation. He said what has not escaped notice in Canada is King Charles playing nice with Trump. Last month, the monarch sent a personal note to invite Trump to a rare second state visit in his honor. Charles, who has yet to visit Canada, as King suggested Trump drop by Balmoral if he happened to be golfing in Scotland to discuss how to organize the state banquet. The director of Citizens for a Canadian Republica group that wants to drop Charles as head of state says the recent royal performance has blown apart the argument that an outdated constitutional connection to an overseas royal family somehow offers us protection from the USA. Others argue that Canada is lucky to have a head of state who has direct access to Trump and can hopefully encourage him to change course. Canada has a steadfast defender in our King, Carney said after his recent meeting with Charles. Indeed, British media this week speculated that Charles is preparing to make a secret offer to Trump to get America to join the Commonwealth of Nations, a club of 56 countries, including Canada, mainly made up of former parts of the British Empire. Being part of the same club, which is helmed by Charles, could reduce tensions between the US and Canada. I love King Charles, sounds good to me. Trump posted on Truth Social in response. Buckingham Palace declined to comment. King Charles is head of state for 14 countries, including Canada, Australia, Papua New Guinea, a handful of Caribbean countries, and the South Pacific island nation of Tuvalu. Population 9,300. Barbados in 2021 ditched the monarchy, and several other Caribbean nations, including Jamaica, are considering following suit. Canada presents the opposite problem. Charles is being urged by his subjects in Canada to step up and stop America from potentially deposing Charles. 22. United Kingdom Heathrow Airport fire. What we know about the closure of Heathrow Airport. A fire at a substation in London cut off power to one of the busiest airports in the world, causing travel disruptions globally. Planes are parked at an airport. Heathrow Airport is an important travel hub for Britain, Europe, and the world. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 21st, 2025. Heathrow Airport in London was expected to be closed all of Friday, shutting down one of the busiest air hubs in the world and causing worldwide travel disruptions after it lost power because of a fire nearby. An average of more than 220,000 passengers a day traveled through the airport last year on flights offered by dozens of airlines to about 180 destinations around the globe. United Kingdom fire halts operations at Heathrow Airport in London, throwing global travel into disarray. A giant blaze near one of the busiest airports in the world knocked out power, the Energy Minister of Britain said, and the cause was under investigation. Tens of thousands of travelers worldwide were stranded. Fire engulfs London substation. A fire at a substation in Hayes in western London cut off power to Heathrow Airport, one of the busiest in the world. 23. United Kingdom Ed Miliband says he is confident government will meet its target of net zero by 2050. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, March 21st, 2025. Ed Miliband says he is confident government will meet its target of net zero by 2050. Good morning. After a disastrous week for the Labour government, with many saying the party have abandoned their core values by cutting disability benefits, Ed Miliband is trying to shift focus on to the government is carbon emissions targets. The government is absolutely up for the fight over net zero, Miliband said as he accused the Conservatives and Reform of a total desertion and betrayal of future generations by failing to tackle the climate crisis. Miliband told the BBC Today program that he is confident the government will meet its target of net zero by 2050. 24. Germany. In Germany, orphaned by U.S. shock, gives way to action. No country in Europe is as much a product of enlightened post-war American diplomacy. Now adrift, it has begun to reckon with a new world. Politicians in rows hold their hands up to vote on Tuesday. German lawmakers voted to loosen the German debt rules so that it could begin revamping its economy and rebuilding its military. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. March 21st, 2025. Updated 6:01 a.m. Eastern Time. The United States gave Germany its democracy and its constitution. It supported German reunification when France and Britain had their doubts. It has some 35,000 troops in Germany dedicated to the defense of Europe, but Trump and his administration now see Europe as an adversary, NATO as a burden, and Russia as a friend. J.D. Vance and Musk have thrown their support to a far-right party with neo-Nazi members that wants to undermine the German government and supports the Russia aims in Ukraine. Germany, perhaps more than any other country in Europe, feels adrift, orphaned, and even betrayed by its closest ally. The biggest indication that shock is giving way to action came this week as the lower house of the German parliament voted to loosen the long aversion to debt in Germany so that it could begin rebuilding a military and a domestic infrastructure that had fallen into neglect. It was a groundbreaking step given taboos about German militarism. Germans and other Europeans know they must take to adapt to new hostility coming from both Russia and the United States. A former foreign minister, radical leftist in his younger days, and now a Green Party stalwart, said, "I always had a complicated relationship with the United States, which was far from perfect, but the US was always the shining city on the hill. We have lost not only the power that protected us, but also the guiding star in the sky. Europe must rearm in response." He said German leadership is essential to do that, though many on the continent are still insistent that Europeans must, as Fisher put it, continue with our close alliance with the US while becoming as strong as possible to deter Russia. This is the end of the European peace order. We have to do European security on our own, and it is an emergency because we have war in Europe. It was a sudden feeling of being on our own, a bit orphaned. There is an understanding that Europe is now what is left of the West. And that is especially important for Germany. The sense of betrayal by Washington is perhaps strongest among Germans who grew up in the first decades after World War II. There is no other country in Europe that is as much a product of enlightened post-war American policy as Germany, said Baggerborn in 1965. So the shock is deeper. Here Germany embedded itself after the war in the European Union for domestic prosperity and in NATO for security, and Germans developed almost a religious belief in the importance of an international community of shared values and work to strengthen it, confronting an American administration that says there is no international community, but only nation-states competing for prosperity and power is an existential challenge for Germany. The Germans should not break with Washington or do anything to speed the rupture if NATO has become larger and stronger in response to Putin of Russia and his invasion of Ukraine. As for Germany, there is the feeling that the trusted and generous Uncle Sam is now suffering from dementia and does not recognize us or our huge mutual interest. The Trump antagonism is serving the interests of those who would love to see more anti-Americanism here, including our Russian friends. He said the willingness of an incoming German government to spend huge sums to modernize the German military is a direct and appropriate response to Washington. In the February 2025 federal elections, more than 34% of Germans voted for parties with strong anti-American sentiments. And in a poll this month, only 16% of Germans said that they trusted the United States as an ally compared to 85% for France and 78% for Britain. Some 10% said they trusted Russia. 25 Ukraine. Trump has sought to control the information that comes out of his private discussions with foreign leaders. A high-stakes test awaits in Saudi Arabia on Monday with talks on Ukraine. How the Trump diplomacy resembles a game of broken telephone. The discrepancies between how the U.S. and others are interpreting the Trump calls are adding up. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Guardian, March 21, 2025. The Trump shuttle diplomacy between Russia and Ukraine has at times resembled a game of broken telephone, and the Trump disregard for the details suggests the ceasefire he seeks is further off than his bullish statements may suggest. Consider the events of just the last week after his call with Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. Trump said that the two men had agreed to a partial ceasefire on energy and infrastructure targets, indicating that Russia would not target bridges, hospitals, railways, or other civilian structures. Hours later, a Russian drone slammed into a Ukrainian hospital. The readout of the call in Russia said that it had agreed to a halt on strikes on energy infrastructure, suggesting that everything else was fair game. Europe, though, is not need Trump to form a Western alliance, and one is already taking shape. By Wednesday, the White House press secretary was dodging the question of what was discussed, pointing reporters to the Trump readout without clarifying if Trump had misunderstood their discussion. That day, Trump surprised the world by announcing that the U.S. was proposing an American-led privatization of Ukrainian power plants in order to provide a new security guarantee to the Ukrainians. Trump ordered his national security advisor Mike Waltz and Secretary of State Marco Rubio to provide an accurate readout of the call, in itself a curious distinction. In it, they said Trump had told Zelensky that American ownership of those plants could be the best protection for that infrastructure. Not so fast, said Zelensky on Thursday. The power plants are national property and belong to all Ukrainians. A takeover bid had never come up if the Americans want to take the station from the Russians and they want to invest there and modernize it. That is a completely different issue, he said. In terms of ownership of the nuclear power plants, we definitely did not discuss this with Trump. The discrepancies are adding up and Ukraine is looking to protect itself from a potentially catastrophic misunderstanding. On Thursday, Zelensky also announced that he would send a team of negotiators to Riyadh in order to supply U.S. negotiators with a list of energy infrastructure that it wanted to be included in a partial ceasefire. I do not want there to be a different understanding of what the parties will agree on, Zelensky said. Trump has a habit of describing complex and sometimes compromising conversations in exultant hyperbolic terms. The Trump recent phone calls, particularly with Putin, have been held in a similar black box. After they spoke this week, the Kremlin said it had demanded a cessation of foreign military aid with Ukraine as part of any long-term peace that was never discussed. Trump claimed Trump has sought to control the information that comes out of his private discussions with foreign leaders, and in his recent discussions, particularly with Putin, the White House has not made clear which advisors were present on the calls. The exercise next week in shuttle diplomacy in Riyadh may prove a moment when Trump can no longer paper over the cracks. When Sergei Lavrov and Yuri Ushakov met with U.S. negotiators in Riyadh, they brought decades of experience and pointed to draft agreements to help shape the discussions. The U.S. negotiators appeared outflanked after the Trump-Putin phone call to prevent attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. The Russian military had shot down 7 of their own drones. Some members of the Russia ultra-patriotic right have ridiculed Trump in subsequent days as gullible. The West believed that nonsense, and that is great, said Mikhail Zvinchuk, a popular Russian military blogger and propagandist, during an online stream. The Minsk Accords between Russia and Ukraine agreements sought to halt the conflict between Ukraine and Russian-backed proxy forces in the Ukraine southeast, but they were seen as deeply disadvantageous to Ukraine and were plagued by the details of which side had to provide which guarantees and in which order. Ultimately, they collapsed. RAWSEP afterward. In episode 57, DFQ One World, 8 Cool Ideas to Repurpose an Old Fireplace. RAWSEP view of how people can live with the unalterable remnants of former wood-burning appliance without going back to the old polluting traditions of the past. 2 World Tuberculosis Book Review. John Green is obsessed with tuberculosis. His new book explains why RAWSEP view tuberculosis is a communicable disease which threatens to become a greater public health scourge than before because of Trump cuts to USAID. 3 World and United Kingdom hate jury duty. These people actually pay for it. Immersive theater productions are taking jury service, which most consider a burden to be avoided at all costs, and packaging it as entertainment. RAWSEP view. Is it a good idea to embrace your inner critic and use logic to condemn certain aspects of human behavior we all share, but which in criminal actions are taken to the extreme? Should the type of critique juries are asked to make be applied against political crimes such as those being perpetrated by Trump? From Maine to Texas, Medicaid to tribes may be cut. RAWSEP view certain groups can protest Trump cuts that also affect the entire general public adversely. 5 New York and Vermont linking Ocasio-Cortez with Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez puts her own spin on the pitch of Bernie Sanders. RAWSEP view, the editor of RAWSEP, worked for the Sanders campaign for president in 2019 and believes the Sanders critique can be used against Trump cuts in 2025. 6 New York, the end of NYC congestion pricing by Trump is being delayed a month by Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. RAWSEP view Trump interference in city matters is overreach, and any eventual victory for NYC for congestion pricing helps the fight against air pollution from vehicle emissions, which is PM25, has similar adverse health effects to indoor residential wood burning. 7 Wisconsin Musk finance door knocker stumped for right-wing Brad Schimmel, who opposes liberal Judge Susan Crawford in the April 1, 2025 election for Wisconsin Supreme Court. 8 Wisconsin Musk offers $100 to Wisconsin voters, bringing back a controversial tactic. RAWSEP view, the editor of RAWSEP, lives in Madison, Wisconsin, and appreciates the importance of liberal Susan Crawford winning on April 1, 2025 as a Wisconsin Supreme Court justice. Technically, Musk is not at conflict of interest by only donating through a PAC to right-wing Trump acolyte Brad Schimmel, but this interference in Wisconsin state politics is a threat to the governance of Wisconsin. Free from imposition of ideas of a self-described neo-Nazi, Musk also seems to be donating to Schimmel in order to buy a Schimmel vote in an upcoming Tesla case before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. 9 United States Tesla recalls nearly all Cybertrucks over stainless steel panels falling off. RAWSEP view, this article describes one Tesla disadvantage in 2025 competition with other electric vehicle manufacturers. 10 United States Tesla share price falls. RAWSEP view, this article describes a second Tesla disadvantage in 2025 competition with other electric vehicle manufacturers. 11 United States Pam Bondi, U.S. Attorney General, to bring charges for Tesla damage, citing domestic terrorism. RAWSEP view, this article describes a third Tesla disadvantage in 2025 competition with other electric vehicle manufacturers. Either Teslas are now so unpopular people are risking jail to protest the vehicles, or this is an example of Republican dirty tricks as performed in the 1970s by Trump friend Roger Stone, where violence is committed with hopes that it will be unfairly linked to peaceful protesters, in this case protesters of Tesla, which have spontaneously erupted across the United States in 2025 in response to actions by Musk at home, firing thousands of workers unnecessarily and with no cause, and Musk abroad, attempting to interfere with elections as a self-described neo-Nazi. Unfortunately for Musk in 2025, there are viable alternatives to Teslas for owning an electric vehicle. 12 United States Washington, D.C. judge blocks the Musk Doge from accessing Social Security records. RAWSEP view, this is a worst-case example of what South African native Musk is doing to threaten the lives and economic viability of American citizens, often those over the age of 65, who have paid into Social Security their whole working lives and who are entitled to Social Security payments. 13 United States, there is a way for Democrats to stop Trump and save America. RAWSEP view, focusing on one economic topic to protest and educate American voters about is a good suggestion. 14 United States Justice Department tries to intervene on the Trump behalf in January 6th lawsuits. RAWSEP view, this is an example of how Trump is using the courts to do for himself what is not done for average Americans. 15 United States tainted food given a pass. 16 United States, it sounds strange though, is not it? Trump muses about gutting the education department. RAWSEP view, this is an example of Trump revealing that even he is momentarily conflicted or confused about the value of what he threatening the American people with. This action also has to be ratified by the legislature, and that has been tried in the past and failed under Reagan. For instance, 17 United States Trump rescinds executive order after law firm agrees to provide $40 million in free services. Trump reverses threat to suspend security clearances and cancel federal contracts after meeting with chair of Paul Weiss. RAWSEP view, this has been called an extortion by the Trump as the president of the United States. This may also result in one less liberal law firm bringing legitimate suits against the Trump, or may even result in a liberal law firm working for the aims of the Trump. 18 United States, the Trump imaginary emergencies are doing real damage. RAWSEP view, waste of taxpayer money and American voter time. Puzzling out the real meaning of what Trump is trying to do to harm them as an economic class is the aim of distracting and illogical Trump-created emergencies also ultimately threatens American lives. 19 United States government science data may soon be hidden. Volunteers are racing to copy it. Vast quantities of climate and environmental information have been removed from official websites in the past month. Scientists are trying keep it available. RAWSEP view, anti-science rhetoric of the Trump does real harm when it is applied to shutting down scientific facts and scientific progress, which in the Biden administration was freely available to all Americans on government websites. Public health and research to finding cures to diseases will be set back. This information is not restored to government websites. 20 United States food banks left in the lurch as some shipments are suspended. 21 United Kingdom and Canada. King Charles is rooting for Canada. You just did not notice. RAWSEP view, the editor of RAWSEP is half Canadian. Even if you are an anti-monarchist, the choice of a United Kingdom monarchy is preferable to succumbing to a dumb, violent monarch in America. 22 United Kingdom Heathrow Airport fire. What we know about the closure of Heathrow Airport. RAWSEP view, this shutdown of an important airport had broad economic consequences in the short term. RAWSEP always deplores destructive fires also. 23 United Kingdom Ed Miliband says he is confident government will meet its target of net zero by 2050. RAWSEP view, even when there are other distractions, democratic governments should keep their eyes on the prize of slowing climate change and saving lives in the process. 24 Germany. In Germany, orphaned by U.S. shock, gives way to action. 25 Ukraine. Trump has sought to control the information that comes out of his private discussions with foreign leaders. 26 RAWSEP afterward. Over and out the last word.
One introduction. RAWSEP view, the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying with stoves this as safe. When they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut down and burn tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.